Jeanna with Now What with Jeanna, and it is Thursday night, 7 o'clock. I am here. Looking forward to seeing some of you in here as well. If you were with me last week, or if you watched from last week, I think that's Andrea. Hello, Andrea. Thank you for joining. Anyways, if you were with me last week and you watched last week, I announced that I was going to do a series on the 7 habits of highly effective people. Is that right way? For some of you, it's the right way. Some of you, it's not. But if I turn it around, you won't be able to see the title, so it don't help. Anyways, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is a book by Stephen Covey, and he's a leadership expert. And this is the book itself is about business. It's a business book. He works with business executives, but there was something in it that when I was reading it the first time, I was drinking, and I didn't get through it the first time because in order to apply the 7 habits, I had to quit drinking, and they started making me think about what drinking was doing to me, and how those habits, they just all connected in. And when I decided to do this do a series about it, with it, the 7 habits. Well, actually, I'll tell you what the seven habits were. I'm stuttering tonight. Let's see if I can find. Oh, here this. It's on this page. So, habit 1 is be proactive, and I remember reading proactive versus reactive, and I realized that in my drinking, a lot of what I was doing was reactive instead of proactive. And that particular chapter, when I reflect on it now, it reminds me of the serenity prayer. God, grant me the courage to do the things I cannot do. Let's see, I do know this prayer because I say it all the time. Grant me the courage to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. I so have that wrong. Serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Anyways, that is, for me, proactive versus reactive. When you do that, you're being proactive and you're not reacting. So that's the first habit. The second habit is begin with the end in mind. Third habit is put first things first. And that one's do the next right thing. And I'm looking to see if anyone else is on. Fourth habit is think win-win, positive attitude. Sixth habit is synergize. And the fifth habit, I skipped one. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. We say that all the time in the rooms. I don't know if you guys do, but I know Vince does. And habit 8 is sharpen the saw. Hold on. I have allergies and everything's tickling the back of my throat. And it stinks. Anyways, I thought I'd go through the 7 habits. Last week I talked about, I think, dependency. I don't remember what I talked about last week. But this week I'm going to talk about the Pygmalion Effect. It isn't into habits yet. We're not in habits yet. Allergies. I was getting to the habits. Like I said, I'm rereading the book. I was getting to the habits, and I read about the Pygmalion Effect, and I thought, what a perfect, yeah. I mean, this is what I believe. It's, we'll talk about the Pygmalion Effect. I'll get to that in a second. So, we haven't got to the first habit yet. That will come next week. I will do the first habit next week, which is be proactive. For now, I need to step back a second and do my introduction. Welcome to Now What with Jeanna, where I offer answer questions, offer tips, and say stupid shit that I am going to later regret about addiction, sobriety, and recovery. If you have a question, please feel free to let me know. I will, and otherwise, keep going with my plan. If it is a deeper question, I can put it on for at a later date. Although I will tell you that I'm trying to do this series first. But if it's, I can go ahead and add it to the end or talk about it as well, or maybe do a different live. I don't know. I just thought I would do this. It's kind of, for me, it's kind of fun as a literature major and someone who likes to really analyze things. So, the Pygmalion Effect. Now, I don't know if you've seen My Fair Lady. If you're younger, you might not have. But it is with, who was that with? If you're younger, I don't remember who it was with, but this professor decides that he can turn this girl into some aristocratic, highly, that's not really what we're talking about. This is a study that was done by Rosenthal, and I've skipped down some, done by a couple people, and what they determined is that the idea that a teacher's expectation influences a student's performance. And Andrea, I don't know if I did this the way I was hoping. I hoped to do this when I was teaching. Andrea was a former student of mine, and my goal was to encourage you to always show you that you can do it, to believe that you can do it, and to have that faith so that you could gain that faith too. And I don't know if it worked out the way I hoped, but that was my goal. So the Pygmalion Effect is the idea that a teacher's expectations influence students' performance. Okay, this does have, I promise, something to do with recovery. So where Stephen Covey got onto this idea about the Pygmalion Effect, he was struggling with his son. His son was having trouble in school. He wasn't the most most coordinated athlete. He didn't do, he just didn't do as well as they thought he should. And in order to handle that, they were hoping to build his self-esteem. Thank you, Andrea. I love teaching you guys. But my big goal was to help you guys think you can. If you don't think you can, then why bother? So I was always trying to support and uplift you guys. Reading about this Pygmalion Effect, I'm pointing to my other camera, but reading about the Pygmalion Effect and kind of suggests that I might have been doing it wrong. We'll see. But anyways, he was having trouble with his son, and he was struggling, and they wanted to boost his self-esteem. They wanted to encourage him. So they would defend him, not let anyone say anything bad about his performance. You can do it. It's okay, son. You're just, so they were trying to protect him from feeling bad, and they made excuses for him. It'll get better. You're not as coordinated, but you'll get there. And what they were saying, what their son was hearing, was two very different things. They were trying to affirm his skills, but what he was hearing is, you don't believe that I'm strong enough to do it by myself. You don't believe that I'm capable. Because they weren't acting in a way that showed that they thought he was capable. I forget what he quoted someone in the book that said, I can't hear you because your actions aren't saying the same thing. I don't know. It was, I'm not hearing what you're saying because your actions are so big. Maybe that was it. I thought it was a great quote. I wish I'd have written it down. I didn't. I can go back in the book and look, but I'm not gonna, take time out to do that. So Covey and his wife realized that how they perceived him was that he was basically inadequate and somehow behind. This is a quote. They saw him as inadequate and somehow behind. That took a toll on the son's self-esteem. He acted accordingly, and there's more to the story, but what I saw was that he was acting defeated. Like, I can't do it anyways. Not even my parents believe I can. When that didn't work, Covey decided to take a different approach. So then comes the Pygmalion Effect. He was remembering what he was studying about leadership, and he remembered the Pygmalion Effect. Dr. Robert Rosenthal and Principal Lenore Jacobson did a study, and what that study was, they told teachers that some of the students were late bloomer, but essentially they were really smart. They had the capability of high potential. And the teachers, so there was like a handful of students. They said, you know what? They tested all the students. A handful of students got the same kind of scores as everyone else. They were average students, but they told their teachers, these kids are late bloomers, but otherwise they're smart. Let's see what happens. And they found out that the teacher's positive expectations helped, and those students, those handful of students, did much better than the children that weren't labeled as late boomers, that weren't given that special attention. They didn't tell them, the teachers, to give them special attention. They didn't tell anything to do, to do anything special. They just said, no, these 5 or 6 students will do better. You just got to give them a little more time. And they identified, Rosenthal and Jacobson identified that there was 4 factors, 4 things that happen amongst these students. First one is that the teachers were nicer to them, both inside and outside of the classroom. And, they'd say hi to them. They were friendlier, helped them out a little bit more. Hello, Vince. I'm going to take a minute. I'm like, stop. My Facebook has not been working for 3 or 4 weeks. Hi, Daniel. Oh, Daniel. Hey, I haven't heard and saw from you in a long time. Anyways, my Facebook hasn't been working on this, so no one on Facebook's been on. And Vince has just told me he's on, and he said hello in the chat. So my chat's working. Everything's working. It has taken me forever to get all this straight. But it's working. I don't know if it's working on other channels, but it's working on Facebook and it's working on Instagram. So I'm happy. All right, so back to the Rosenthal effect, the Pygmalion effect, and our ability to get sober, to get into recovery. And by the way, if no, Daniel's not on anymore. I used to drink with Daniel. Who knows what he's thinking? So, anyways. So there was 4 factors that helped the students do better. First one was a warmer climate, or the teachers were nicer to them, helped them out a little bit more, both inside and outside the classroom. There was the input factor. This is number 2. Teachers taught more material to the students that they thought would do well. The response opportunity factor, and this is the 3rd one. The students got more opportunities to answer than the students who weren't late bloomers, but essentially pretty smart. And then the 4th one is the feedback factor, and that is that the teachers offered more positive praise to those students, and they got more constructive feedback than the other students. The other students, if they said something, I've done this, it said something and it's not quite right, and I don't know how to do it. There's like a okay, and we don't really give them the feedback. I've done that. I love you, Vince, but I've done it to Vince. Okay, and I'm just not sure what to say about it. So anyways, how you perceive yourself, this is the Pygmalion effect, affects how you react to situations, and how others perceive you does the same thing. How you perceive yourself affects how you react to certain situations, but also how others perceive you, how they look at you, also affects how you react to certain situations. Stephen Covey says, we must look at the lens through which we see the world, as well as the world we see, and that the lens itself shapes how we interpret the world. That is a big, huge mouthful. But I'm going to break it down into something different. So, how we see the world. See, we must look at the lens through which we see the world. The lens through which we see the world. I am a horrible singer. This is what I believe about myself. I'm a horrible singer. Hello, sober is cool. Glad you joined me. The world hates horrible singers. That's how the world perceives horrible singers. And where did I go? So I fear singing in public. I'm a horrible singer. The world hates horrible singer. So I fear singing in public. Since I fear singing in public and alcohol helps me get through the things I fear, I need alcohol to help me do karaoke. That's what he's saying when he says we must look at the lens through which we see the world, as well as at the world we see. And then the lens itself shapes how we interpret the world. I never sang karaoke in public without alcohol. And I, to this day, have not done it. Not that I'm not going to. It's one of the things I decided when I got sober, that I can't let my fear stop me from living. I'm not going to let my sobriety stop me from living. And so, regardless of the lens that I see the world and how the world sees bad singers, at some point in in my sobriety, I got a long time for that. I'm going to do karaoke sober. Um, so you may be dealing with this in a lot of different ways. This may be how you think of alcohol, or I'm not a good student. Ritalin helps me study, so I must take Ritalin. I can't ask a girl out. Alcohol gives me courage so that I can, so I need alcohol in order to ask a girl out. I'm under so much stress. I have so much stress. Stress helps me with Xanax helps me with stress, so I'm going to take Xanax. I remember going on a date. It was a first date with someone, and about 3 weeks into the date, we both admitted to each other that we did a shot of vodka because we were so nervous for the first date. And you know, that is it. That's the lens with which he saw the world. He's not going to think I'm interesting because I'm not going to have the courage to speak up, and therefore I must do something to have the courage to speak up. So that's kind of how it starts. Stephen Covey says, if we want to change a situation, we first had to change ourselves. And to change ourselves effectively, we first had to change our perceptions. So they thought his son was basically inadequate and somehow behind. They needed to change the way they looked at his son for his son to change the way he looked at himself. He later goes on to say, and by the way, I'm quoting, so I'm reading notes here. Our image of ourselves and our role as good caring parents was even deeper than our image of our son, perhaps influenced it. There was a lot more wrapped up in the way we were seeing and handling the problem than our concern for our son's welfare. All right. This may go more towards the family members who are dealing with addiction. It's a little bit how you see. So what Stephen Covey was saying was that they were more concerned with the shame that came with their son's failure. As people say, yeah, Steve, no, just don't put Stephen Covey's kid in, on picture because he doesn't play very well. And they were concerned about their neighbors, their friends, their families seeing them or judging them based on their son's behavior. And this is really important for families in recovery because, it really, I got my notes here, says suicide and CJ suicide and my shame. So, how does that handle? How did I handle that? When my son died, I always thought before he died, I always thought I was a pretty good parent. That I did everything right. And, he was he was a lot depressed, but I essentially did everything right. When my son died at his own hands, I went into a place where my shame kicked in. All I could think of was, I didn't do anything right. How must people look at me if my son committed suicide? And that's, yes, that's kind of a self-centered way to look at it. It wasn't the only way I looked at it. It really wasn't. I was, I'd give anything. I'd take that shame if I could bring it back. But that was one of my shames is what did I do wrong? And how is the world going to see me as a parent? Because this happened. And for a while, I couldn't or wouldn't give any parental advice. If I saw something going bad, a parent doing something that I felt was going to, I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say anything because I was more concerned with my own shame, with how I looked at the world, than what would have been in the best interest of my child. I won't say more concerned. I was brokenhearted. It's, but still that was a huge factor in what was going on with me. So, anyways, as parents, as family members, I'm kind of flipping back and forth here, but I'm going to get to that though, as, in an example in a minute, because I've talked about it. So before September 2nd, 2018, what did I think about me? I thought that I couldn't quit drinking, that I was incapable, that the only way I would be able to quit is if I had help, that on my own I couldn't do it. And we say in the rooms that on your own you can't do it, but I truly believe this about myself, that I couldn't even find help. I mean, where do I look? And so I didn't look for help. I didn't ask for help. I was just hoping someone would come along and give it to me. That was before September 2nd, 2018. I didn't react. I didn't act in a way that would get me sober because I didn't think I could. September 1st, 2018, someone asked me to a meeting, and that was all I needed. I needed someone to ask me. I needed someone to help me. And I'd said that if I just could get help, I could quit, but I can't get help. As soon as someone helped me, I got it in my head pretty quickly that I can do this. 24 hours go through, and I've got in my notes here, that wasn't so bad. That was horrible. That first 20 hours and detoxing and having the shakes and the headache, and it was horrible. Let's just face it. It was the worst 24 hours. But that 24 hours, I made that 24 hours, and I go, well, okay, if I can do 24 hours, then I can do another 24 hours. And I made the next 24 hours. And I said, if I can do 48 hours, I can do another 48 hours. And it just kept building and building and building. And now I'm at 3.5 years, and I'm thinking, I can do this. What I think about myself is I don't need alcohol in order to survive. I don't need it to get through stressful events. My dad died in the middle of, not in the middle of me getting sober, but after, I'm looking for my mouse, got a mouse. After, I think 2 years, my dad died. And I said, okay, I don't need alcohol to get through this. I am capable. My family, I don't know. I don't know whether or not they thought I could. And I don't recall them acting as if they thought I couldn't. I know my son-in-law said, when we were on a vacation in Tennessee, he said, we really didn't think you'd do this. We thought you'd relapse. And he said he was very proud of me. He was very supportive and positive. But other than that, they pretty much left me alone to deal with my sobriety, to go to meetings. My mom would ask me, how you doing, once in a while, but she didn't, no one acted as if I couldn't do it. And I acted as if I could do it. So yeah, I didn't have really a whole lot of problem. Okay. Now I said I'd talk about this for families, because I think this is really important. If you're in recovery and your family's doing things for you, and you're getting this idea that they don't think I can do this, it's important that you identify this. If you're a family member and you're doing things for your loved one in recovery, identify how you're doing it. I'm not saying don't do anything at all for them, but identify how you're doing it and what message might be coming across. So, for example, are you buying their groceries or paying their rent? Have you bought their car? Are you paying their insurance? Are you doing it because you don't want them to go hungry, or are you doing it because that you think without your help they will fail? If you're doing it because you think they're going to starve if you don't help, then what they're hearing is, I'm incapable of feeding myself. My mom thinks I'm incapable of feeding myself, so I must be incapable of feeding myself. I'm not going to bother quitting. Because no one thinks I can do it anyways. They're hearing that message. Andrea says, paying rent and bills. Do you do it? Do they do it for you? Do you do it for other people? I'm curious. You can answer. I'd like to know. And it's not that you can't. It's just you got to be careful the message that you're sending your loved one. So I lived with my parents for the right after I was living with them before I got sober. After I got sober, I continued to live with them. They, partly because they needed my help. My dad was sick, partly because I couldn't do it. So they're doing it for you. And keep listening, because I'm gonna kind of talk about this. So my parents were helping me out. And they let me live there, and I was helping them out because my dad had cancer. My mom did not give me any extra cash. She did not help me with, did she help me? She didn't help me with car payment. She did feed me. She didn't act as if I couldn't, you know. However, being newly sober, maybe she kind of thought I couldn't. Being newly sober, I was behind in some bills. I needed some help. I knew that. I knew that. One thing she did do, Mom, I hope you're not watching. You didn't know. You didn't know. You know, you did the best you could. But one thing she did do was that I was to give her monthly rent. And she said that this monthly rent was going in an account for me when I got my apartment, you know, when I needed so I could move out. And that was her trying to help me. But what I heard is I could save my own money. Do you not think I'm capable of saving $100 a month? Do you not think I can do this? You know, what I heard was that she didn't think, you know, I was responsible. And granted, I was drinking for a long time, so I wasn't responsible, but I could do this. And I'd get so frustrated at it because what she was trying to do was good. She really, really, really was trying to do a good thing, but how I read it was not so good. So I thought this was important to talk about, this Pygmalion effect, because a lot of us don't think about how we think about ourselves as mattering. And I've said it again and again, and I will continue to say it. You know, if you have this negative mindset about yourself, if you don't think you can, one of the first things you need to do is shift that mindset from I can't get sober to yeah, I can get sober. I can do this. Um, it's going to build your confidence. It's going to build your self-esteem. You know, it's just simply will put you in a place where you make different decisions about sobriety, about your life, about, you know, um, what you need to do next, what the next right move is. So, yeah, where's your mindset? Where's your mindset? And if it's in a negative place, can you shift it? And the answer to that, by the way, is yes, you can. I totally shifted my mindset, and it didn't take very long. And I did it. I did it going through meetings, but I also did it with a lot of positive affirmations. I did it building up on successes, that 24 hours, that 48 hours, going through a Christmas holiday without a drink. I'm going through a breakup without a drink, and so I kind of built up some things, I'm at a point where I don't need it. It's not part of my life um, to drink. So I think that is about it for today. I've been trying to cut it down to not not to less than and not to a half an hour necessarily, but definitely less than an hour. So um, I'm gonna look at this. I'm looking at Andrea. I'm looking at your comment. I'm not sure. She says she doesn't waste her time trying to drink anymore. That's it. I mean, alcohol is a waste of my time. Um, I don't waste being yes. Okay, now I'm understanding. I had to put some things together. Um, I'm thinking what you're saying is that I might be wrong, that there's an ambivalence there. And I know you enough to know that that's probably true. This Vince said to me, you can want and not want at the same time. And I think a lot of people go through that. I know a lot of people go through that when they first get sober and into sobriety, 2, 3 years in, if they're not finally enjoying their life, they're probably still feeling that. I do know people that are still feeling that. I know people who've relapsed because they felt that. This wanting to go out with your friends and have a good time, but not wanting to get in any more trouble. I would have loved to still drive. I would love to go out and have a martini. I want that. Um, but I don't want to be in that life anymore. I don't want to feel like that failure. I don't. So there's that ambivalence. What I really had to do is get my mindset in a place where I knew for a fact that I could have fun without alcohol, and then I could be successful not drinking. And wow, I remember there were a couple times where I told my family, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. So maybe, yeah, I'm trying to think. Maybe that there were a few times when they expressed um, a negative attitude. I don't know. I think so. Yeah, you can't do this, but I can do this. I got this shit. Or as my son would say, I got this shit. He said it all the time. All right, I am calling it for the night. Next Thursday is going to be more Stephen Covey. It is the first habit. It is being proactive versus reactive, and I'm gonna relate it to the Serenity Prayer, but also I know that that as I was reading this the first time, there was some really cool things about locus of control. I remember that, and what you're in control of. So I'm going to kind of pull that in, and I want to talk about what's your locus of control. This is 60 to 64 in the big book. I think I got too many pages in there, but I always think of 60 and 64. What you can and cannot control, and then of course the proactive versus reactive is what you do when something happens. So that's what we're talking about next week. Please show up. And I appreciate it. I am, by the way, trying to get more organized with promoting this and trying to figure out some more better ways to make sure you see them. I am going to give one last plug. Oh, my nose. I hate allergies. I'm going to give one last plug before I hang up. We just did a podcast with Charlene Madden, and I published it this morning on well, it's on all your podcast players. If you listen to iTunes, to Stitcher is what I listen to. It's going to be on there, and it's also on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, look for Now Sober on YouTube, and I've got podcast. I'm starting to plug in all my podcasts and my videos in there. And so, anyways, the reason I'm promoting Charlene Madden, I wanted to share with you about Charlene Madden. She went through childhood sexual abuse. She had some really, really, really strong suicidal ideation going on. She had big, strong suicide ideation. She dealt with her pain through alcohol. She was at one point a cutter and cut. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's something I did. I've cut before to deal with my pain. And anyways, it's a great, I related so much to this podcast and to Charlene Madden. So go ahead and pop in there and listen to that. If you get a chance. It turned out to be a really good podcast. And like I said, so much connection with all of those things that I wanted to promote it and let you know that it is available to watch on YouTube or to listen to on a podcast of your choice. All right, I gotta go. I will see you guys later. All right, bye. Okay.